Hello, New Garden students. Happy Wednesday. I hope you're having a great day. Welcome back this is the final week of the U Effect. We're going to be wrapping it up this week on this series, and it's going to be a good one. But if you don't already know, we will be on Zoom on Wednesday night at 7 to talk about this lesson and hang out with each other, and I would love for you to be there. Also, you might have seen on social media that we are restarting Monday Night Crew on June 1st. So it is going to be on Zoom for the time being at 4 p.m. and we are going to be getting on every week on Mondays and reading the Bible together and discussing things together, and it's going to be a good time. If you talked to somebody who was involved in Monday Night Crew last summer, we had a lot of fun together and there's a lot of growth involved, and so I would love for you to be a part of that and join us on Zoom on Mondays at 4 starting on June 1st for the summer. So without any further ado, we are on week 3 of the U Effect, and I want to ask you if you know about cause and effect. You probably do. I'm sure you learned about it in school or something like that. But cause and effect is when one thing happens and it makes another thing happen, right? So maybe you see a cause and you think, oh, my mom is in a great mood today, so I'm going to ask her if my friend can come over. Or your teacher assigned something that's due on Monday, so your weekend is ruined and now you're going to be doing homework all weekend. Cause and effect. One thing happens and it means something else. And sometimes it's big situations, sometimes it's smaller things, obviously, but you get the idea. And a lot of times when something good happens, it is easy to attribute it to ourselves, right? Like, I got a great grade on that, which must mean I am the best student in the whole world. I'm so smart. This is great. But it's not always as easy to attribute negative things to us. Like maybe you lost your phone and you're blaming your brother or sister because they were using it earlier, but actually you just put it down and you don't remember where you put it. Like, it's not always easy to take the blame when it's something that you have done that had a negative effect. I remember this time in high school. I don't know why this sticks out to me always, but I was in a play my junior year and we were recording one of the performances and there was a lot of dialogue and I said the wrong line and it skipped over like 15 minutes of conversation. It skipped over the best jokes, the funniest part of the play. And of course it was the one that was being recorded, and I caused that, and the effect was that the best jokes were left out of the recording, which was very sad. But it was a negative effect that I caused, which is not always hard, or not always easy to admit, right? And when we have a negative effect, we lose some influence. And that can be in a big way, like maybe you have made a decision that caused your parents to not trust you as easily anymore. That was the effect. Or maybe you got in a fight with one of your friends and the effect is that another friend took their side and y'all aren't really that close anymore. It could be something like that, or it could be like little things over a long period of time. Maybe you decide you're not going to come to church one day, and then it just becomes easier and easier to not go for a long time. Or maybe you decide, oh, it's no big deal if I just fill in the blank. It becomes easier to do that, and then you might look around and be like, oh, I didn't know I really did that, but it looks like I have lost some influence based on the effect that this thing is having in my life. I remember a time in high school where I had like a very specific friend group within the youth group at church. There were 3 girls and 3 guys, and we were like the crew. And then this new girl came, and she was in my grade, and she was really cool. And one of my other girlfriends in the group decided like we were going to be really good friends with her and kind of started leaving out the girl who was already in the friend group with us. And over time, like that had a huge negative effect on how our friends interacted. And that girl started slowly not coming around as much, and we kind of lost touch, and it had a negative effect on the way that she interacted with our friends and with our church. And it was like based on the decisions that my other friend and I made to bring in this girl and kind of leave that girl out, which was not cool. And like our friendship suffered because of that. I lost influence with her because of the way I treated her. And the way we treat people has a huge impact on the influence that we have. The decisions we make has a huge impact on the influence that we have. And the you effect is affected by those things. So it can be big, it can be small, but the way that we act and speak and interact with people is going to affect the influence we have on the people around us. And if you have ever been concerned that you have lost influence in an area of your life, if you've been concerned that you've had a negative effect on someone or something around you, you're not alone. And the story is not over, right? That's what we're going to be talking about today, is that so many people in the Bible have felt that. I dare say most of the stories in the Bible are about people who think their influence is shot and that their story is over and there's no coming back from it. But the thing that we see time and time again is that God steps in and says, this is not the end of your story. I'm going to change this for the better, and your influence is not over. And that's what we're talking about today. So we're going to be looking at a story in the book of Luke. And Luke was a doctor and a researcher, and he spent a lot of time with Jesus's followers and learned a lot about what happened in Jesus' ministry and wrote it all down, and that's how we have the Gospel of Luke. So we're going to be picking up in chapter 7 in verse 36. And our story starts with a dinner invitation. So it says, when one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. So just so you know, you may already know, Pharisees were Jewish religious leaders, and they were very by the book. They were following the letter of the law. Like, that's what they were going to do. There was no way around it. And they were confident that they were having a positive effect on the people around them. So much so that they looked down on people that they thought had either a negative effect or less influence than they did. So with that in mind, this is what happens next. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house. So she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. As she stood behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. So, this may sound strange to you, which isn't fine, totally normal, but foot washing was something that was normal during this time, very common, because people were walking around in like a dry, hot, sandy environment, and they're wearing sandals. And when your only mode of transportation is walking, pretty much, like your feet are going to get disgusting, especially when they're going to be covered with dirt and sand and sweaty and gross. So when you came into someone else's house or your own house, it would be pretty usual to wash your feet so you don't like bring in all that gross stuff. Like when you get mud all over your shoes and your mom is like, please leave your shoes on the porch. Kind of like that. So this was pretty normal. But what was not normal is that she wasn't just using water, right, and a rag. She wet Jesus' feet with her tears, wiped them with her hair, and poured perfume on them, which is expensive. Like, if you think perfume today was expensive, think about how hard it was probably to come by back then. So we know all of these things, and she was a sinful woman, which is a double whammy. Like, she was living a life that the Pharisees did not approve of, and she was a woman who already was looked down on in society. Women were thought of as property and not valued, and so this girl kind of has everything going against her. But this is the thing that she was doing for Jesus, washing his feet and pouring perfume on them. So picking up in verse 39, when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner. So the Pharisee thought, I know better than Jesus. I know who this lady is. We've heard about her on the street. Like, she's the talk of the town. We've been talking about all the bad stuff she's done. And Jesus doesn't know. And if you're a prophet, he would know, right? That's what the Pharisee is thinking. Thinking to himself, like, if he knew that she was a sinner, he wouldn't want to be around her. But what he did not understand is that Jesus hung out with people that other people in society did not want to even come close to. Jesus was about people like this woman. The people who were looked down upon, who were outcast, who didn't really fit into a nice, neat box in society. And not only that, but those kind of people were drawn to Jesus. People with no influence were drawn to Jesus. People who were dubbed as sinners were drawn to Jesus. And people who had negatively affected other people were drawn to Jesus. And we see this all throughout his ministry, that people who are called sinners, people who are sick, people who have a low social status, all want to be around Jesus. And so, like, this woman is not, she knows her reputation, you know, she's clued in. And she wants to be around Jesus. And she knows that her appreciation for Jesus is fueled by her own inadequacy. Like, she knows that this jar of perfume, in the eyes of the people around, is the most valuable thing that she has to offer. Money-wise, it is, like, super expensive. But she sits at his feet and, like, has this act of worship and washing his feet and crying at his feet, kissing his feet, and just, like, being there with him. She is drawn to him and knows that she's safe there with him, even though she has negatively affected whoever it might be, even though she does not have influence in the society around her, even though the people that are literally in the same room as her all think horribly about her. She is doing what she knows she needs to do. So she was not afraid to get close to Jesus and worship him, even in this intimidating environment. So Jesus decides he's going to tell a story. So we go on in verse 41. It says, "Then he turned toward the woman and said to Simon, 'Do you see this woman? I came into your house.'" I came into your house, right? You did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman, from the time I entered, has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore, I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven, but for whoever has been forgiven little loves little. Then Jesus said to her, your sins are forgiven. So we can see that Jesus and Simon the Pharisee view this woman completely differently. That Simon is seeing the things that he believes are wrong about her, the things that are bad and separate her from what he thinks is the right way of life. And Jesus looks at her and loves her and forgives her and wants to be near her. So, up until this point, her life has looked like this. The cause, she is a sinner. Therefore, the effect is that people looked down on her and thought negatively about her. That has been the way her life has operated until now. Because now, Jesus looks at her and loves her. Therefore, the effect, she's forgiven. She's seen by someone and accepted. And that is a totally different thing. She thought all hope was lost. I'm sure. She thought there was no coming back from her past, no coming back from her social status, the things that everyone thought were wrong and bad about her. But Jesus saw her and loved her and forgave her. And that was not the end of her effect, right? She thought, like maybe you have thought before, like, that's kind of it for me. Like, I guess this is who I am now. My effect isn't good now. It probably never will be. This woman, like other people we've talked about in this series, we don't even know her name, but we know her story. And for thousands of years, people have been reading her story and have been affected by it in a positive way. And so what we see here is that because of Jesus, we can change the effect that we have on others. So if you're in a position where you think that your effect on other people is negative or just non-existent, look at this woman. Because with Jesus, we can change the effect that we have on others. And I know that might be intimidating. It might be scary to think that, that this is not the end. Sometimes it's easier to just accept a negative fate almost and be fine with it instead of thinking maybe this story will turn around. But we see so much hope because of this woman. And we know that it has been encouraging people for so many years. And I hope it's encouraging you today. And so, what do we do with all of this? There are a few steps that we can take now that we have looked at the story of the simple woman and move forward with knowing that with Jesus, our effect can change, that we can have a positive effect on others. The first thing we can do is reflect. Think about the way that you talk to other people, the way you interact with other people, and the decisions that you're making. What do those look like? Are those having a positive or a negative effect on the people that you're around? The second thing we can do is confess. And that might be a scary word to you, confess. But maybe there are some things in your life that you know are not good and helpful, that are having a negative effect on the people around you, or that are causing your influence to be less. And the first thing you can do with that is just to talk to God. He is not scared of what you have to say. He is not surprised by what you have to say. And that is a place to start. But if you want to talk to a person about it as well, you can talk to an adult that you love and trust, and just get some stuff off your chest. It might be scary, but it's also freeing to have that kind of conversation, and have somebody there who will encourage you and point you in a good direction. And finally, you can identify a specific step. So I know y'all always laugh because it's like, what can you do this week to blah, blah, blah. But what can you do this week to improve the effect that you have on the people around you? Do you need to apologize to someone? Do you need to watch your words more carefully? Do you need to have a conversation and try to mend a relationship? I don't know. Whatever that may be for you, try to identify a specific step, because you may feel like you are far gone in a certain area or a situation, but we have seen today that with Jesus, we can change the effect that we have on other people. So please join us on Zoom at 7 on Wednesday as we unpack some of this a little bit more and talk about the way we can change the effect we have on other people, and we wrap up the U effect. So I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will see you on Zoom.